is I'm going to invite Siva. As I introduce him, maybe you could share a story of somebody that's received tremendous value by working with the U.S. and the China Chamber of Commerce, and perhaps maybe share a how do I statement of an idea or opportunity or a challenge that he would phrase for us so that we could segue into asking questions, providing input, ideas, thoughts, suggestions. And at the end, I'll invite Siva to share the value that this session has been for him. And so introduce Siva Yan. He has 22 years as the president of the U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce and certainly comes from a capital finance background. I had shown the website. The website is usccc.org, and predominantly on that is just his influence that he has on Washington, on the political scene, the relationships in so many different areas, not just Chicago, New York, LA, but certainly China as well too. With that, Siva, please kick us off with the story and certainly share your input and thoughts. Siva Yan.
Well, and thank you very much, Rocky. And as Rocky had mentioned, I came from a finance background. I worked as an investment banker for Stifel Nicholas, and I started my own investment banking firm in Chicago called Chicago Capital. Then the founder of the U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce happened to be a friend of mine. He was, and his name was Prescott Bush. Obviously, the Bush family is very well connected around the world. And Press started the U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce, so he invited me to help him to build the organization. So I have been working as more than just one job, U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce president, and also do investment banking. As times move on, I spend more time with the U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce, and I saw my interest in the Chicago Capital. So what we do was we basically help U.S. and Chinese companies to do business. We don't get involved in politics, even though, and you see that we have pictures with all the politicians. We know all the politicians, not all, but we know a lot of politicians from the Washington, D.C., Beijing, to many, many people. But our cores are U.S. company. We have about 5,000-6,000 U.S. companies that have worked with us, either they or they use our service. We also work with the Chinese company. So basically, the chamber does three things. We host events. So we organize trade conference, trade mission, networking, seminar. The second thing that we do is we have members. So we support the members, do as a network. Our network is very focused, U.S.-China business. Then the third thing that we do is service. Like we provide the visa, travel assistance, passport, document of indication. We also help U.S. company to find supplier, joint venture partner in China. Then on the other hand is my personal business, investment banking. We help to do merger, acquisition, set up operation, and raise capital. We are going to launch a new platform. Is the Angel Network, an angel fund, and we have a focus on the Trans-Pacific. The reason is in the last 5 years, we have seen a growing trend in the Asia Pacific, particularly Southeast Asia, the Vietnam and the Philippines. So we have an office in Vietnam. We are going to build another office in Philippines. I think the future growth would be in the 4 areas: USA, China, but China a little bit mature. And then you have the Southeast Asia with a focus on Vietnam and Philippines. For a couple of reasons, they have big population. Philippines and Vietnam end up together is 200 million people. And then second, they are emerging. Vietnam basically had opened up the economy, even though it's a communist country, but you do not feel you are in a communist country. In Philippines, and after the U.S. military pull out, and they are converting SUBIC, which the naval, and also the Clark, which is the Air Force, is going to be the free trade zone, Clark will become the second biggest city in Philippines. So those are the opportunity, and also e-commerce. So to answer Rocky, what are the opportunity? The opportunity is you are going to see that China is deleveraging the internet. We focus on the manufacturing. That's my opinion. And they will continue to fine-tune the economy. So despite all the problems now, I think China will come out okay because the Chinese government is heavily involved. Government is involved in business all over the world, even in the US. When everything goes wrong, we are bailed out. United Airlines, car company, finance company. But China do it more one step further. They are finding much more. Then the second growth area is the Southeast Asia. I believe that the Philippines and Vietnam, together with Singapore, which is very expensive, but unfortunately, Singapore is a small country. So, and even though they have the best technology, capital, but expensive and small, but I think you're going to see that. Then from an area, one of the biggest thing is e-commerce. I think Amazon had developed habits for people to shop, to buy. Every day, it does not matter where you go, and you see people buy Amazon. Then when you go to the post office or UPS, they return the thing. But you see more cross-border e-commerce. And I think Amazon, 90% suppliers are from China. We just don't know it because you buy on Amazon. You think they're local. And I think those are the things in the technology continue. I think one of the areas that U.S. need to be focused is on manufacturing. I think and that will open up more opportunity. Now, for the VIDA, we work with a couple of educational institutions. So we do the seminar in China and USA. And we are working with a university. We may launch an international entrepreneurship program. It's a small university, but they have offsite training, EMBA in China and Vietnam. So we are talking, I'm going to talk to the president about the possibility to launch an international entrepreneurship program. In the last few months, 2 years, we have been working with Small Business Expo. We have done a couple of webinars. You can probably find on the website. On our website is to encourage entrepreneurship. That's one reason why we launched the, and I think, and you can go to the video, and there is resources. And you see the video. Yeah, click on it, and you will find that some of the yes, and go down, and I think there's some video on demand. Okay, webinar. So, and we have launched a couple of the webinar is particular for small business. For three things, I think small business entrepreneurship are very keen on. Number one is if they have a product or idea, how can they raise capital? That's why we are forming a TPP angel fund is to address that. One of the advantages of the TPP is to combine the resources of USA, China, including Hong Kong, Singapore, and Philippines and Vietnam. We had investors from, right now we have some investors from Singapore, United States, and we had network in Hong Kong, Singapore, China, Vietnam, and Philippines. They can, and because a lot of the technology can be transferred and localized. So the first thing is capital. The second thing for small business entrepreneurship is they have an idea how can they do the prototyping. How can they find factory to make the product? How can they find supply? Then the third thing is when you have new idea or product, how are you going to protect the patent, the invention? So we are going to have a platform that will address that. Plus our network, we have 6,000 US companies in all different kinds of area, manufacturing, education, nonprofit, government, lawyers, accountant, and we can provide a one-stop resource platform. And that's what we are trying to do. So to summarize, and I don't want to take too much of the time, do all the talking. To summarize, I think the future is in technology, e-commerce technology, logistic is going to be big because, and you see now we have a larger logistic problem. And you look at a larger industry, they are heavily dependent on logistics. And even the computer chip, nowadays we have shortage of computer chip because of the logistic problem. Automotive is all logistic. While they make car locally, the parts are sourced globally. So logistic, e-commerce, social media is continue to dominate, to influence people because people love to talk about themselves. Social media give them an opportunity. I think those are the things that are the future, but at the same time, we need to be focused on manufacturing. If we don't, you are going to see more trade deficit, more social unrest. Thank you so much, Rocky. Thank you.
Thank you, Siva. I appreciate you sharing that. And I want to welcome Bill Blyler he comes from a technology background, as you mentioned, technology and internet and certainly manufacturing. He's a key component of that as well. So let me open it up for questions or comments or thoughts for Siva. Anybody?
Well, I mean, yes, it's open. We've become really a global economy, and I've noticed that a lot of things are being manufactured in Vietnam and China more so. It's basically rerouted everything simply because cost and balances and all of that. So how would you deal with that with some of the American companies?
Well, here is what the situation is. And since Bill just joined, I don't know if Bill had heard some of the comment that I said. I say the future would be e-commerce, logistic technology, manufacturing technology, and I think from a region, particular Southeast Asia, because and you see there was an enormous growth in Southeast Asia for the social media user. And one company in Singapore, they do an app and did a reverse merger into a SPAC, weighs about $3 or $4 billion. And that's enormous. So, and the technology is certainly will dominate, but we don't forget about the manufacturing. So to get back to your question, there is a very difficult situation for U.S. company. We have shifted our economy to the service economy and technology, and we have moved the manufacturing overseas. But having said that, a lot of the manufacturing move overseas are the low value added, labor intensive area. So, but that's logical. As the society continue to grow, to improve the quality of life, and then the labor cost continue to rise, and it's very logical for do that. We do see that, but I also said that the loss of manufacturing create a social unrest, create a social, and create a trade deficit. So how do you do that? One of the key things is improve our manufacturing technology. Many years ago, you have the machine tool company, Cross and Tracker, Gidding and Lewis. A lot of those in Cincinnati, Millicon, those companies either they are bankrupt or they were acquired. We have lost the focus on manufacturing. So, and I was helping a Chinese company to buy the machine tool to make the how you call the, and I need to look at the term, like the needle for my semiconductor. They want to buy from America, but we could not find the machine tool in America because they make in Singapore, make in even India, Japan, Korea, because we don't focus on that. So, and even though we ship to manufacturing, we have not really put a lot of effort in it. So for US to revive its manufacturing, we need to focus on industry that we have the advantage. We need to improve the manufacturing technology. I give you an example. 20 years ago, a small company came to us, they do the tool and die. They do about $7 million. 20 years later, with our help, they are doing $150 million.
Wow.
What they did was they make the tool and die. Tool and die are very, very expensive to make in America. A simple tool and die costs about $400,000. So what they do is they ship the manufacturing to China, but all the design are done in America. So, and it's very important, and because the internet helped them, the technology helped them. Because they, in 20 years ago, you did not do that because you had to print a big blueprint. You had to, using courier ship it to China, cost you $200 for overnight. But now all you do is internet. So he hired the engineer, design engineer, design the tool and communicate with the Chinese. So they make the tooling in China and save them a lot of money. Then they ship the tooling back to America, do the stamping. When you have the tooling, the stamping have very little labor costs. So they grow the company from 7 million to 120, and they also hire almost 125 high-level engineers. Not only they make the tool and die for themselves, they make the tool and die for their competitors. Yesterday, I have another company. They did exactly the same. I took them to China. They make the mold in China. And then every month, they make about 20 to 50 mold in China. Then they ship the mold back to USA or Europe. And when you get further, so you need to have a strategy. You need to have a high-level manufacturing job. But improving the manufacturing technology is critical. We have the best internet, we have the best technology in the world, and yet we have not been focusing on the manufacturing technology. When you look for CNC, people go to Germany, people go to Austria. Okay, they buy those machine tools there, and then in some later injection molding. I don't think we make any injection molding machine anymore. They buy from Germany, they buy from Japan, Toshiba, all the things. So I think the U.S. company can do very well in the manufacturing if they be focused, improve the technology, know where the sweet spot is. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Siva. Obviously, we realized about the manufacturing because of the pandemic, having respirators, having equipment here, and also because of the logistics that you mentioned, we can't get the products from the Trans-Pacific area. So that's caused the delay. So it made sense if you manufactured here in the US, not only can you get the products right away, but maybe, I don't know if the cost would be lowered, maybe the cost would be higher because it is a lot cheaper to get it overseas. But let me invite others to ask questions. Bill, Davida, any questions, comments, thought?
I mean,
good morning.
now,
Bill, then Davida. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for joining.
So one of the big topics during the Trump administration was, of course, the whole tariff issue. Okay. So a two-part question. You haven't heard as much talk on the tariffs during the first 8 months of the Biden administration. Where does that stand now in general, and how does that affect your position as the president of the joint U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce? I'm sure it's a sticky issue, and how do you deal with that?
Wait, and I mentioned it before you came here. The U.S.-China trade issue have been going on for 20 years. All the previous presidents had talked about it, and I trust that President Trump was the person who really took the action. Whether we agree with what he did or not, that was not relevant. But what relevant was he was the person who took the action. So he started it. The real issue is when that thing got started, I don't think you are going to see a lot of changes in the near term. So I think the USTA and the Biden administration will continue the course of what President Trump has said. I do not believe they will escalate. There's a possibility that they would de-escalate. However, I do not believe that it is going to happen very soon. So for what happened to us, it basically have a larger negative impact on the U.S. importer. So, and it triggered a few things. So some of them are looking for some other sources. One of the typical is going back to the Mexico. Okay, and some people may ship the part to Mexico, and then they do more of the manufacturing, as long as you transfer, you change the nature of the product, which become a very undefined term. Then you would basically change the in origin. So, and they can be labeled as Mexico. The problem is, and I mentioned before you came here, and President Trump had complained that U.S. has subsidized the shipment overseas. To some extent, that is true. So, and because of the very unique situation, that's why, and you see the e-commerce is growing trans-Pacific. So, and then what happened is, and you see U.S. company begin looking for some other sources. And the Chinese, they also rented a larger warehousing space in Vietnam and ship the product there. So, and some of them will actually did some changes. So, and they can change the country of origin. Some people are just simply breaking the law, ship it without changing it. So, when you see a lot of thing going on, I think that in some of the U.S. company would basically bite the bullet, pay for the import tariffs, and then pass on to the customer. Some of them can pass, some of them may not be passed. Then the other thing is try to do some manufacturing in America, but we have not seen a lot of action that they are moving the factory back to America. So, and I hope that will answer your questions. Now, and let me back up. And you also see a dramatic increase in the e-commerce because people selling from Amazon, when they ship here, they do not have to pay import duty if they ship directly to the end user, anything under $800. And then when they ship, as I put a big pallet, and because the 7501, the import duty declaration form, is thousands of pages, hundreds of thousands of items. So they're always under report, and our border control does not have the capacity to look at every item because some are $5, $20. So, and you also see an increase in e-commerce across Pacific.
Yeah, we're seeing that now. Davida, you had a question or comment. Did you want to ask? Davida Shinsky?
Yeah. What I was going to say was, we've actually, in the last few years, we've truly become a global economy, and I think that it's how all these countries should be working together. And I know that I've had companies from China contact me about, I guess, partnering with me to do an e-commerce store. And how do I want to word this? With incorporating all of that into business, how would you see that those partnerships growing in the next few years?
Well, in a couple of things. The unfortunate thing about global economy, they always tie to politics. Even though it had been not the best decision, I think politics should be separated from a business. Unfortunately, always see that. So U.S.-China will continue to have dispute. And the U.S.-China relations is not the same as U.S.-Japan relations for a couple of reasons. Number one is the philosophy of how to run the country, dramatically different. And then the second thing is China is emerging to be a big country. And you look at all the business, if you want to be successful, you need to be engaged in a very, very large economy, which is driven by the population. So, and it's very logical. Company, even though they have a niche player, they may be a small player, if they have a unique niche position in either China or USA, they are doing very well. If you focus, and even though you are dominant, well, and if you a company focus in a small country, small economy, you don't do well. So because of that, and you see US and China are becoming more competitors, even though they still need to cooperate. So, and that is one of the problems. Then the second thing is job. Today, a person will lose the election. Well, and not today, but most of the time, they will lose the election if the economy goes south. So when you look at President George Herbert Walker Bush, he lost the election partially because of the economy. So people are more concerned about the economy. So the people in power, they would do, most of the time, they will do whatever they take to maintain the economy. So in that equation, even though we talk about technology, the biggest element in determining whether the economy would stay healthy probably would be the real estate. If you look at the history, all the recessions are related to the real estate. When the real estate market crashed, most of the time, the economy would crash as well. That's why Chinese government continued to make sure that the real estate would not crash, even though they are overpriced and people cannot afford to buy them. So unfortunately, the global economy will continue to dispute, and you just need to know how to work around it.
Thank you for that, Siva. Appreciate it. Other questions, comments? We have time for one or two more. Anybody? So, Siva, go ahead.
So,
Bill, do you have a question?
Yeah, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, Siva. I've heard mixed insight on this from various people. I know that there was my company imports certain items from Shanghai area. I know about a month back there was a problem from a shipping standpoint. The Shanghai airport, a lot of the airports were shut down due to a COVID scare. But my feedback is that that's passed. The COVID scare is passed, but the shipping delays are still intact. Is that artificial delays or is that real delays?
Well, it's a real delay. You can say artificial. First, China and many Asian countries had taken the COVID very seriously. Their strategy is zero tolerance. When you have any cases, they literally would shut down the airports or port. Then the second problem, you cannot find workers in the logistics, particularly because like when and you cannot ship the frozen chicken feet from Brazil to China because Brazil have the cases and the frozen will keep the virus alive. So when a truck driver go to pick up the container, then they may need to be quarantined. So that's an interruption. Then because of the COVID, they do not know where the containers are. And then the other problem is, you don't have container, you have a shortage. It creates a larger problem. Then the other thing is because of the COVID, you cannot find workers in the logistic area, and then in the whole supply chain have been disrupted. Particularly the computer chip, the microchip, because they need a larger part. And then the other thing is because they cancel so many commercial flights. Commercial flight is one of the biggest carrier or cargoes. So when you cancel the commercial flights, then you squeeze almost everyone in the cargo. So we try to book a 747. In a normally it's about 250 grand, but now you are looking at $750,000 one way. So when you see a dramatic, then you have the Long Beach, Los Angeles, they power up for weeks right now. So and the whole supply chain is completely disrupted. So in one of our focus, and I mentioned to Rocky that we are sitting on an angel fund. One of the angel network focus is logistic technology. And technology and logistic technology wastes billions of dollars now.
We had experienced the delay, and then we hadn't experienced the uptick in freight costs because that was locked in. But now we're experiencing for future shipments up to 4 times the price.
Yes, because there's a and because the logistics have been interrupted. So when you have much more demand than supply, and many people and people, and they could not even get their wedding dress from China, and then people are worried about the Christmas gift. They are not going to make it, and I think all the store would be empty, and people are concerned. So the best Christmas gift this year is cash, cold cash.
Yeah. We now again. I'm really, this is fascinating. I'm curious your projection because I get a lot of sources, and you're close to the fire. But the projection from my side was that things should stabilize after the first of the year, somewhat. Your point about the flights, again, your average person doesn't realize that how much freight is transported both internationally and domestically on, through normal commercial passenger air travel, right?
Right.
They just assume it's all these cargo ships, bringing stuff in. It's piggybacking with other flights. But my source said that come the first of the year, you should stabilize the chip situation to stabilize early or middle of the first quarter. Is that what you're seeing?
I believe that there's a good chance things will stabilize in the second quarter 2022.
The second quarter, okay.
Yeah, I believe that will be stabilized. Then we have another not so good news come out is a Merck, the quote unquote cure for the COVID was supposed to be a game changing. But yesterday I saw the news and they could be related to potentially cancer or birth defect health risk. So, and if that proven to be true, then we are going to be another step back. So, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So, and if that happens, we are going to see the further delay in our life becoming more normalized. But what happened is, go ahead. But what happened is the COVID give us a wake-up call. We need a better strategy for manufacturing and logistics.
It's fascinating because one of the things, and I'm not aware of this. I think I know my Chinese culture pretty well. One of the factors here in the supply chain here in the United States, or excuse me, in the lack of workers is a problem I don't think you have in China. There's a disincentive for lower end workers to return to work because they're the unemployment benefits that they're gaining. Okay. And until the wages, get, cross the curve of what they're making on unemployment, they just don't have the incentive to return. So you have a lot of what would be frontline or lower end workers that are not available, and they can't find workers because they're reaping the benefits of unemployment. Is that's not a factor in China? Is that correct?
Not really, but China is facing another problem right now is the energy. Because they have a dispute with Australia and they would not let Australia ship their product to China and Australia taking revenge. So they stopped shipping coal and that creates some problem too. But yeah, and the problem is not that significant in China. But labor cost in China is not cheap either. Many years ago, a lot of the technology company would ship the programming to China, but now, and you hire a good computer high-level engineer it's $5,000 to $6,000 US. So it's not much cheaper than here. Then you have communication issue. So in it changing the dynamic, that's why, and you see some of the manufacturing are moving to Vietnam. The problem about those countries is and they don't have the infrastructure. So our country is moving to the right step because China had the best infrastructure in the world. And those countries, they don't have the infrastructure. So like India is good in the IT outsourcing, but not in manufacturing because they don't have the infrastructure to ship the good. But IT is very simple. All you need is, internet connection. So, and China is having a little bit problem in the energy, but again, the labor cost is not cheap either. It's getting there. But compared to United States for the low-end worker, and they still very competitive. But the good thing about China is they have the infrastructure, the supply chain that they have developed since 1978.
Good. Thanks for that, Siva. Thanks, Bill. Other questions, comments, thoughts? We have time for one or two more. Anybody? So I wonder if you could say more about the TPP. I know that the last presidency got out of the TPP, and this presidency has not indicated anything about going forward with that. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think it excludes China, but you were saying I think that it might include China the next go around. Siva?
Well, what happened was China always create their own network, free trade. So they had the APEC, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. And then US is not a full member of the APEC. And I think President Obama was working on the TPP. So the TPP would be US and the Southeast Asia Trans-Pacific Partnership. China was not part of that. And when President Trump took over, I think he basically completely backed out of the TPP. So TPP was kind of dead because you don't have the big nation to take the lead. Just like in any investment, if you don't have a big, and just like real estate, and you don't have an anchor tenant, and you don't have a deal, and you don't have a lead investor, it's tough to get it done. But now TPP is coming back to life. I think those countries will continue. So there's a possibility that China may get into it. I do not know whether President Biden would take any action about the TPP. He is in a difficult situation because when President Trump put it out, you suddenly went back in, and you remember, and President Trump still have a lot of vote for him when he lost the presidency. So, and you see that, and they become a very, very sensitive. So in my opinion, you are not going to see USA would aggressively jump into the TPP. USA would certainly need to do more to build a relationship with Southeast Asia because it's very critical, particularly in the southern parts. All the ship they gone through, if any thing unstable, it would further interrupt the logistic, the supply chain. So to summarize, the TTP is getting a lot of steam nowadays. China may get into it, but US still on the sideline.
Yeah, I think that'll change, and I agree with you. We need to have relationships with the Asia Pacific area, including China. I don't know. I think it might have been political that they excluded China with the TPP, but if they could come back, I think it would certainly help our economic relationships or also political relationships. So thank you for that, Steve.
In Rocky, may I add just one more thing? I mentioned before Bill came in, we set up an angel fund called TPP. One of the ideas is to link the resources of USA, China, Singapore, Hong Kong, Philippines, and Vietnam. I told the audience in this meeting that I think the future growth will continue to be USA, China, and then Southeast Asia, particularly Vietnam and Philippines. because now, and you see Robert Pincus put in close to $1 billion to build a logistic warehouse in Vietnam, and Facebook just put the cost-specific fiber cable. In Google, they all do it in Singapore, not Singapore, Philippines. And because of a few things, number one, they have significant population that add up to be, including Indonesia, you're looking at almost 400 million people. Number two, they have economic reform. Vietnam from a communist in the Philippines, after the U.S. military pull out, now they are using those opportunities. Then now, and they are highly young population, they use more internet, social media, significantly in e-commerce. So, and I think those are real opportunities.
Yeah, I think so too. Although there is some differences from China and Singapore. I think China was sending some ships, or no, some airplanes, and threatening that destabilization. And also, China and Hong Kong has been a very difficult situation for the last few years. So we'll see if how that plays out. Obviously, China's going to win that. There is a timeline, I think, of 2040 or so. Very good. Other questions, Bill? Any thoughts, comments, anything else?
Yeah, one topic. A lot of topics to talk about. I'm glad you're on it. We haven't discussed the Evergrande situation. Do you see that spilling over into having a domino effect globally, or is that going to be confined to China?
Well, that is a very tricky question. Almost 20 years ago, I was invited to give a speech at the Global MBA at one of the leading universities in the world, and the professor talked about the banking situation. She said that on her research, China banking is going to collapse. She was not particularly happy with my comment. I said that I don't think there was an issue. It's very simple. Who borrow the money? Company, but they are all controlled by the Chinese government to some extent. Who loan them the money? The Chinese government. So you're basically reaching out from one pocket to another pocket. The real estate market has always been highly leveraged. China is all leveraged. Couple of reasons. Number one, a lot of lending are based on relationship. That's how they run the economy in Asia. Not like the British system, which is based on the British common law. So, and a lot of the lending was based on relationship. They call the policy lending. So companies are highly leveraged. They do not look at the balance sheet. They do not look at the cash flow. Now they change a little bit. Okay. So when I first helped the Chinese to be trained in finance, they did not understand what cash flow mean. They do not understand EBITDA. But that was 20 years ago. So most companies are highly leveraged. And then when they have money and they went overseas to do all the crazy shopping, like Anban Insurance, they just sold the strategic hotel back. They paid $6.5 billion. HNA filed bankruptcy. They own the building in Chicago, across from on Madison, in between LaSalle and Wells. So they overspend and they overpay. So the government keep a stop on it. Okay. So and then a little bit different about that company is because they have a lot of bonds are being sold overseas. So, however, I do believe, like what I said before, the real estate industry is one of the most important stabilizing factor in the economy. I think the government will step in. The Chinese government have a lot of money. I think they will step in to stabilize the situation. I think that, and it will be just like HNA, Anban Insurance, and at some point of time, they are going to be solved. But in the meantime, they will create some turmoil, but I think over time it needs to be okay. And I don't think they'll have a lot of negative impact globally.
Yeah, you got, I think the last thing I saw was $300 billion in debt. Now, would the Chinese government come in would they actually take on that debt? Would they do loan? How would they facilitate that?
I think they're going to break the company up first.
Okay.
And then they will restructure, and I think and they will put some money in.
Interesting.
I think the first thing is they break up just like HNA.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, that answers the question, because I've heard again mixed that one analyst said he did not think it would spread. I mean, much of a global ripple. Another said it could because of their international holdings. So I was just curious how that would play out.
Right.
Yeah, they might break it up like they've done. China has done that with Jack. I forget his last name. They've done that with other companies. Jack Ma, yes, or it's some of those other institutions. So one of the quick questions in Siva, we do have a Peers on Demand in Australia, Peers on Demand in Malaysia that we've just opened up. I would love to be able to have a Peers on Demand that's focused in China and being able to have some participation with that. Any thoughts as to perhaps how we might be able to proceed to be able to have a China executives on demand session? Siva?
Well, and I think and that would be very interesting because and I think that China will continue to be a major player. I think if company want to be successful, like what I said before, they need to be engaged in the biggest country in the world.
Correct.
Now, we have not talked about India, but India have been and have not make and they make some profit, but nothing compared to China in certainly. And if we want to be successful, USA and China are very important. I cannot emphasize more that Southeast Asia is emerging. They have a larger population. If you look at Thailand and you look at Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Singapore, and I think maybe even Brunei, which have a lot of money. You are looking at about, close to 500 million people, Thailand, okay? And a lot of wealth over there. And some of the countries are emerging. They are going for economic. And I think that could be a very interesting, and it would be a very, very good platform for a lot of people to have better understanding how they can position their company for the future.
Yeah, one of the challenges that I have is the language. With other countries, English is a standard business language. So with China, Thailand, speaking English, I wonder if that might be a barrier not to be able to speak Chinese. Siva?
Yes, and that's always a challenge. A lot of Chinese do speak good English, but there's still a challenge. So, and therefore, a lot of the event that we do mostly are U.S. executives who have experience in China. And they also give us more objective opinion too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a challenge.
Well, that's what I thought about it. And I wanted to be respectful, but I'm finding in Malaysia, we speak English. Obviously, Australia, we speak English. So it makes it easier to do that. And of course, the time is also one of the things. For Malaysia, we have it at 2 a.m. US, which we're okay. We can handle the time. And it seems like the language is not an issue. Like with India, I think the majority do speak English. But China, in having us Peers on Demand in China, the language was one of the thoughts that I had. But, that's my best language. So until we could do something differently, that we'll use English. So thanks for that, Siva. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So your English is good. Are you based here or are you based in China?
And I'm based in Chicago.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah. Great.
Well, and before you came in, I introduced myself that my background is in investment banking. I work for a regional firm called Stifel Nicholas.
Okay.
And back then, and I joined the Bacon and Whipple in Chicago, which are old investment banking firm. Then the founder of the U.S. China Chamber of Commerce name was Prescott Bush. And I worked for and the chairman of Stephen Nicholas was George Herbert Walker.
Oh,
George
sure.
Herbert Walker, yeah. So, and I worked for George Herbert Walker, and Prescott Bush was the first cousin. His younger brother was the an official ambassador to China. Later on, became the president of America. That's how the chamber got started, and that's how I got involved in the U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. So, Siva, I wonder if you might close us off and share the value that this session has been for you, Siva.
Yes, it's wonderful, and thank you for all the questions. And I hope that my campaign can help people, particularly entrepreneurs, to position themselves for the future.
Well, thank you, Siva. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and you've done a good job, Rocky. And I wish we had more occasion like that.
And I do too. And you're certainly welcome to join us in any of our events. The opportunity is that certainly you can participate or showcase. We have an upcoming innovation exchange, October 22nd. It'll be the last one for this year. After that, it'll be in January. My intention is to have an innovation exchange globally, so that because it could stay up 24/7, then we'll have speakers for different time segments. So my intention is to have Malaysian presence, Chinese presence, U.S. of course, Australian, European. So, but you could freely participate. That's one of the things. You can go to peersondemand.online and freely participate and be able to listen to speakers. And you can also be a speaker if you're a gold mentor, and that we have an audience. Right now we've got 200 people registered. So my intention is to have a day of innovation exchange that is global for all parts of the world, with different speakers for each time segment. And so it's one of those things I was thrilled and excited to be able to talk to you, Siva, and develop a relationship, because my intention is to narrow the gaps in the China-US relationships and Asia Pacific. And I want it to be closer. I think it starts with communications, that we are able to talk to each other. And after talking to each other, of course, then business happens. And after business happens, then we get along better, and the politics doesn't get in the way. There's always going to be politics. We can't help that, but we could certainly minimize that if we're closer in business relationships. So I want to thank you, Siva, for what you've done with experience with 22 years with the U.S.-China Chamber of Commerce. And I recognize the value that you brought for all of us, including myself, today and even in the future. So for helping businesses, and actually, in my mind, bringing us together as human beings and citizens of the world. And I want to thank Davida and Bill for participating. Your questions are valuable. Your presence is valuable. Even more important is the beginnings of relationship. I encourage you to connect with each other. I will connect everybody on LinkedIn so you have an opportunity to carry on further conversations. So with that, thank you for joining us. Join us again when your time permits.
Thank you so much, Rocky. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
And I did send you a LinkedIn connect request. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for the good work, Rocky. Thank you.
My pleasure.